We are at war, and this is the biggest war we've ever seen in our lifetime. Hello, I'm your host, PK Aliu, the all round creative, and this is Wrong with Life, a podcast where we talk about a bunch of topics that stay mostly productive. And today we'll be talking about the war we fight within, the greatest war of our time, distraction. First of all, let me set out this disclaimer. I'm not a motivational speaker that has my life all figured out. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm actually like you if you're watching this and you relate to it. I am just trying to figure out why it's so easy for me to be distracted when I have important work to do. It's crazy. We've probably all been in this situation where you're trying to get some work done, but you have to check your phone for something quickly, and you grab your phone before you know it. You're scrolling. You scroll for an hour, and then you realize that I shouldn't be here scrolling. I have work to do. And then you're like, why did I come on this app in the first place? What brought me here? It was something important, but I can't remember what brought me here. You scrolled for an hour and you forgot your purpose. That is absolutely crazy. That drives me insane. Like a lot of time, it happens a lot of times, and every time it happens, it scares me to my bone. It feels like I'm in some sort of matrix. I'm getting brainwashed or something. Like, how is it possible that I came on an app to do something important? I lost my way for a whole 1 hour, and then I cannot even remember my way back. I can't even remember what brought me there in the first place. If that doesn't scare you, then you probably have to think deeply and know that this is bigger than it seems. It's very easy to like laugh it off and say, it's a normal thing, it happens to everybody. But it wasn't like this. It was never like this. It's something that is happening, and it's happening so much that we are learning to accept it. Now, why is this a problem? This is a big problem because attention is the biggest currency of today's age and time. That's the reason why your big influencers make money, your streamers, your content creators. That's the reason why probably everybody wants to be a content creator in like this day and age, because attention is the currency that everyone is fighting for right now. It's not money, it's not time, it's attention. And whatever you give your attention to defines you in the long run. It defines how you think, it defines who you are. Like everything about you is going to be broken down and be a product of what you give your attention to. And that's why sometimes I find myself thinking, why do I really get distracted with things like this? What's really happening under the hood? And how can I break free from distraction? I broke this down into 3 points. And those 3 points, when implemented, can help you break free from distraction. Now, the first point is you need to realize that you are at war. You are getting addicted, and it needs to stop now. That was the first step. It's like when you're running, at least I always try to relate things to running. You have to realize that you're running to take it seriously. If your mind doesn't know that you're actually doing a physical activity, it wouldn't provide what your body needs to carry you on and sustain you on the run or whatever you're doing. So realization is always the first step. Now, we understand that this is a big problem, and now we understand that we are addicted. What do we do about it though? Because understanding that is a problem doesn't solve anything. It only makes you know that, okay, this is a problem. Now, how do we solve that problem? How I solve that problem, or how I am trying to solve that problem, because it's a struggle that continues, trust me, is basically I try to understand it. That is the second step. So you might have to try to think and sit. I understand why it's increasingly becoming easier for you to get distracted away from the things that matter the most. And it's because, as I said, attention is a currency that everyone is trying to fight for. So every video is literally trying to be better every time at stealing your attention. If you're a content creator, you probably understand this when you talk about getting the best hooks. If you do ads or marketing or stuff like that, they probably tell you about like how to grab the audience, make sure that you convert the viewers into people that actually buy whatever you're trying to sell. You can start to understand that there are a lot of people trying to steal your attention, literally. But that's not the only problem, because at the end of the day, we cannot control what people do. We can't control that we are in a world where everyone is fighting and trying to steal your attention. We can only control our internal. What can we do in this sort of environment to protect ourselves from the toxicity and the way the world is structured? And what I found that works for me personally is trying to understand that I am only getting distracted because I am looking for an escape. So a lot of times I get the most distracted. It comes right after I've done some serious work, or at least it starts this way. I do a lot of work, burn myself out, probably don't sleep for a couple days. And then after that long stretch of work, or after achieving what I set out to achieve, I feel like relaxing. To be fair, I deserve it. But I actually feel like relaxing. And how do I relax? Relaxation is an escape. How do I find that escape? That's probably what defines what distracts me. I most likely will try to watch a movie, grab my phone, scroll on Instagram, order my favorite meal, eat it, things like that. I started to understand that those things are what I like to call an escape. Because if you work so hard or if you're a productive person, you realize that once in a while, just to prevent burnout, you need to have an escape that you pour out all this stress and energy into. It's like wired in your brain. Your brain has this thing they call dopamine. If you haven't heard of dopamine before, I will just try to explain it a little, and probably I'll have another episode where we dive deeper into the idea of dopamine and your reward system in your brain. Every time you do something hard, your brain looks for a reward. The only reason you had the motivation or the will to do that thing is because your brain knows that at the end of that thing is going to get a reward. Motivation is literally your brain anticipating that after that hard work is going to get rewarded. So if there's anything you do that is hard that you don't get rewarded for, you won't have motivation to do it. Imagine if you're hungry and then you have to go and cook, but you know that after you cook, you can't eat the food. You probably won't cook. You probably like, what's the point? I won't cook. Or you have to work, but you're never getting paid. You get the picture. So how does dopamine play a role in this? Dopamine is being released every time you reward your brain. A lot of things we have to do to release dopamine in the normal structure of how life and our society is built, it has to be worked hard for. For example, the natural things that would give you a lot of dopamine are things like eating food, having sex. What else? Let's just stick with those two things and let me try to explain from there. So let's say eating food. You probably know the saying, no food for lazy man. So for you to be eating, it means that you probably worked. You probably had to do something for there to be food on your table. And let's say, for example, sex. In the normal structure of the way the society was built, we're not talking about like now it's a lot different. You can literally just pay for sex and get it. But the normal structure of our biology, you had to actually raise up a female and get her consent before you actually get sex. And that is hard work, whether you like it or not. So your brain has gotten, or the brain was designed in a way that after hard work comes a reward. After the reward, or during getting the reward and doing hard work that gives you the reward, your brain releases dopamine and makes you feel good. It makes you feel good for doing the hard work, and it makes you feel good while reaping the benefits of what you've done. Where the problem comes in is the internet. Human beings, we started to tweak the way the world was meant to work normally. We started to hack our way into things. We started to invent things that made life easier for us. But easier is not always better. We started to create other things like drugs that when you take them, they release a large amount of dopamine in your brain that is just not natural. Like no natural food will give you that amount of dopamine. So the problem now is it starts to teach your brain, or it starts to teach the human brain, that you don't have to work hard anymore. You can just get the things that give you dopamine without working hard. And where the problem enters is, if you don't have to work hard anymore, what motivates you to work hard? That's the reason why you find out that when you're lazy and you don't want to do any work, that's the perfect time you can now decide to calm down and play some game, watch videos, scroll mindlessly on the internet, and do all those sort of things that give you quick dopamine, easy dopamine. You're not working hard, you're just scrolling and you're seeing content releasing dopamine in your brain, which is good. You are easing off steam, you're letting go, you're relaxing. But the problem is, it trickles down to making you lazier whether you figure it out or not. I have noticed this in my life that every time I scroll too much, I give into my urges of scrolling mindlessly on the internet, watching every video that comes to my mind, eating anything I can lay my hands on, anything I crave. You get, it makes me a lazier person when it done uncontrollably. And the graph is crazy. I get lazy to the point where I can't even do anything. To the point where nothing is interesting anymore. Like I'm lying down, I'm hungry. There's food in my kitchen, obviously. I'm free. I should go and cook, but I don't even have the motivation to step out of my bed, enter the kitchen, and make breakfast. So what am I thinking now? I'm thinking of, now I should just order something. They should just bring it and I should just eat. A lot of times what I'm ordering is not even better than what I have at home. I'm just too lazy to calm down and prepare my meal and wait for that reward. I have become impatient. All I want is fast dopamine, as fast as I can get it. I want the highest amount of dopamine released in my brain with the least amount of work. And at the end of the day, that happens 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You find out all the goals you set for that month, you've barely achieved any of them. You have lost your mind, lost your purpose, and forgotten what you were meant to do, all because of the internet. I hope you understand how dopamine works now and why it's a problem. What makes it even harder, which is insult upon injury, is the fact that in the olden days, a lot of their jobs were handy jobs. Like you were a mechanic, you were a cleaner, you were a bricklayer, laborer, farmer. You didn't need the internet to do anything per se. To be fair, the internet wasn't big then. It probably wasn't invented in some of those ages. But now a lot of us, and I'm very sure that a lot of you, actually work on the internet. So it's like you have no choice. You have to be on the internet. You cannot, like, you can't actually do without the internet. Somewhat. You can. It's not like you die, but where you make your money, like where you work, to sustain yourself, you have to get on the internet. And the internet is good. It's not like it's all bad. It's good, partially. But you can't deny the fact that it's distracting you and making you a worse version of yourself when used uncontrollably. And that's why we're trying to control that part of our life. Now that we understand why we are addicted and how our brain works, and we know that this is a big problem, how do we solve it? This takes us to point 3. We're talking of how to reconnect, how to snap back to reality, how to detox your brain and get you focusing more than you ever focused. How do I do that? Actually, I do that with a lot of things. And for me personally, that's how running comes into my life. Running is a form of meditation. So the first point I'll be putting out there on how you can detox your brain and get yourself back to being the person you used to be is meditation. But not the kind of meditation that you probably think of. Think of it this way. When was the last time you sat down doing nothing? I personally stay alone. I don't know if you do. But when was the last time you were all alone? You were sitting down. You were not necessarily thinking of anything. You just sat down. You were not worried about your phone, about the internet, about your WhatsApp messages, your snaps. You just sat down for at least 10 minutes and just thought. You just let things go. Appreciated life. And that's where the problem comes in. We get too used to distracting ourselves. We hate boredom so much that if for any reason we have to be in an idle state of mind, we fail to appreciate ourselves and focus on things like our environments, our breathing, or just let ourselves be and lie there. We tend to grab our phone at the slightest form of awkwardness or anything boring. And what that means is we are looking for an escape. We're trying to distract ourselves from the present. And the way to solve this issue is doing the opposite. Sometimes you should try to take out time to meditate. When a lot of people hear meditate, they probably think of monks sitting down, crossing their legs, doing some sort of Indian yoga, whatever you picture meditation as. But it's a lot easier than that. Meditation is just the act of doing nothing. I personally see running as meditation. If you're in the gym without your phone, just there, hitting up your weights, you probably notice that your mind runs through a lot of things, But at the same time, you're not thinking of any one thing. You're just in a state of flow, a state of ease, where things come and they go. And you're just thinking of life. You're thinking of yourself. That is the state you want to be when you meditate. If you probably go to the gym, you probably are practicing meditation if you're really locked in. If you probably run, you're practicing meditation if you're really locked in. And sometimes I like to do that just sitting down on my bed and just trying to do nothing, focus on my breathing and let thoughts come to my head. But without thinking of them, I just let them go. I just acknowledge them and let them go. I found out that when I do this for at least 10 minutes, I tend to regain my focus or I tend to have motivation for whatever I want to do. Sometimes I find myself putting off things I was meant to do. I wake up in the morning, I can't find motivation to do anything. I just want to relax and flex. I don't want to do anything hard. I find I just lack motivation. And then I realize that while I'm lacking motivation, not want to do anything, I'm currently scrolling. I'm currently on my feed, scrolling mindlessly, filling up my brain with negative dopamine. And that's where I stop myself in my tracks. I drop my phone, put it aside, and I tell myself, let me sit down in my room doing nothing. Focus on my breath for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, if you can, maybe an hour. And I found that after practicing that, I feel so bored and so relaxed that I calm down and remember what actually matters. I might be thinking 1 hour, 30 minutes, 10 minutes is a lot of time. But if you think of the amount of time you spend scrolling, you probably waste more than that every day. So that's number one. Try to practice meditation. Number two, and this one works perfectly well when you're just trying to lock in and get something done. You have a time set out to do a particular thing. Let's say you want to get some work done. You have like 3 hours to get that work done. The first step I do, because I work with my laptop, I try to switch off my phone and put my phone in another room. So I make sure that my cell phone is not in the same room I'm in. And that helps. There was a research that was done, and in this research, the volunteers were split into 3 groups. The first group were told to focus on some sort of work, and they told them to place their phone on the same decks they were working. The second group were asked to put their phones somewhere in the same room, but not close to them. So let's say they're working on the decks behind me. They were asked to put their phones somewhere at another corner of the room and focus on work. And then the third group were asked to keep their phones in a separate room and focus on work. Based on that research, they found out that the group that had their phones in a separate room did the best. They were the most focused, they finished the task the fastest, and they used more of their brain cells on the actual work they were trying to do. This paints a picture. You might think that your phone is only distracting you while it's in your hands and you're distracted from what you're doing. But your phone is distracting you as far as it's in the same room you are in, even if you can't see it sometimes. So take your phone, keep it in the kitchen, keep it in the toilet, switch it off and keep it there. So that you're not anticipating hearing that blip sound of the notification popping up on your phone, waiting to get distracted. And that's a hack I normally use when I want to get myself locked in and focused. So learn to put your phone in a separate room, especially when you're trying to lock in and work on something that is important at that particular time. The third thing that can help you get rid of this circle of distraction is something that is very important. It's the hardest to do out of these three, but it's very important and so important that I cannot understate it. And it's called a dopamine fast. Now, from the first idea I gave you, which is sitting down still, doing nothing, and focusing on your breaths or focusing on whatever, the reason that works so much is because your brain is in this state of calm where there is literally zero dopamine activity. Your brain is in a state where a lot of people will call boredom. It's in a boring state, a state where you're doing nothing. And that is the only state of mind where your dopamine is reduced. The level of your dopamine is being reduced. I explained that every time you anticipate a reward or you do something that gives you a reward, your brain releases what they call dopamine. And every time you get cheap dopamine, that's you're not doing hard work, you're just strolling, or you're trying to hack the system to get dopamine in insane levels without actually putting in the work, like taking drugs, maybe drinking, smoking, eating the sweetest thing ever, and giving into your cravings so often. You hack your dopamine system and you raise what they call your dopamine threshold. For example, let's say normally you do something as little as taking a walk every day and that brings you joy, or watching one video a day and that brings you joy, or eating randomly. It doesn't have to be your best food, just eating anything you have to eat and that brings you joy. When you hack your dopamine system, that's by whatever, taking drugs, scrolling on the internet mindlessly, doing whatever that gives you insane amount of dopamine without you actually doing hard work, you raise your dopamine threshold. So whatever used to bring you joy, the little things in life that brought you joy, they stop bringing you joy because now you have a lot of things that can bring you more joy with less work. That's literally how your dopamine works. So before you could watch TV just 1 hour in a day and it felt happy. It felt like that was the time you literally poured out your stress and it was enough to sustain you. And now you're mindlessly scrolling and all you want to do is watch TV all day, eat your favorite food all day, give in to your cravings. That is because your dopamine threshold is being increased. And the only way to reduce your dopamine threshold to the level where you start to enjoy the little things in life and start to get motivated enough to do the little things like doing the dishes, cooking for yourself, actually doing the work that matters, the only way you can bring yourself back to reality and reset your mind is with something they call a dopamine detox. And how do you do a dopamine detox? Now, this varies from different people, depending on how much you feel like you have to reset your brain, depending on how fucked up you think you are. And this also works for if you're addicted to anything. It's not only if you're addicted to your phone, it works for literally if you're addicted to anything. A dopamine detox is a sort of fast. So you think of all the things that gives you dopamine in your life, everything that can release even the smallest amount of dopamine in your brain. Now that we understand dopamine, like when you eat anything sweet, when you stare at a screen, when you watch TV, when you scroll on Instagram, when you have sex, you release dopamine. You get the picture. You could probably like search this up, but I think these are the basic things that will give you dopamine in everyday life. Now, a dopamine detox works in a way where you try to avoid these things for an extended period of time. So the first step was you sitting down and doing nothing for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And that was kind of like a short version of the dopamine detox because you are teaching your brain that it's okay to be bored, it's okay to sit there doing nothing. Dopamine detox is the extended version of this. How I do mine personally is every Sunday, I try to detox my brain. So I engage in a fast. I don't eat anything. I try to stay away from my phone, my laptop. I try to not engage in anything that has to do with my screen, watching the TV, watching anything. And I try to stay away from every other thing that would give me a dopamine spike. So I live my life in a very boring state. I just sit down doing nothing. I try not to eat. I don't avoid my phone, switch off my phone. I got this little touchlight phone that I use. I put my SIM on in case I have any important messages to take or calls to take. And that's like a Nokia touchlight phone. So it's not really releasing much dopamine in this day and age. And doing something like this, that's doing a fast, whether it's a fast from eating or a fast from your screen or a fast from anything that gives you dopamine, whether it's drinking alcohol, smoking, or anything like that, it resets your brain to the point where after the fast or the said dopamine detox, you are in a new state of mind where your mind is relaxed and it's easier to think about the things that matter. The little things in life become more enjoyable. Now, I would be making a different episode about the technicalities of dopamine detox and how different people see it and how you can structure yours. But this is practically how I do mine. And you can do yours anyhow you want to do it, whatever you feel works. So you can decide to eat, but maybe not eat anything sweet. Maybe just eat basic food. You're trying to avoid the sweetest things you like your pizza, your ice cream, your cravings per se. And the most important one you have to stay out of, definitely, the most important one is staying away from your screens. You definitely, if you're doing dopamine detox, you definitely have to stay away from your screens, watching movies, scrolling on the internet, and doing anything. So you just find a day that you don't have to work, like Saturday, and you do that. And you will see wonders in your life. You will actually see that after practicing dopamine detox, you are so focused. Even during the dopamine detox, you get a lot of ideas about your life and how you've been messing up and how to fix the problems you have, that it will be amazing. And then I have a bonus step for you. The fourth step to how you can regain your focus is being aware. You are being aware of yourself. So every time you try to work and you get distracted, catch yourself in the act. So for example, if you're working on something and you have your phone beside you, you need to check your phone, or you catch yourself trying to check your phone for something. Acknowledge the pattern. Notice that that is the beginning of distraction. Now from dance, play the start. Now from play, dance, they start. I don't know, you know the saying. I don't know if you know the saying, but it's a saying that says, now from play, dance, they start. Or something like that. If you catch yourself in the act of trying to get distracted, recognize the pattern and be aware that you're about to distract yourself. Tell yourself, oh, I'm doing it again. I'm trying to distract myself. So a lot of times what I do is I think of why I want to hold, why am I trying to get my phone? Like, why am I trying to distract myself now? What is the excuse I'm giving myself? Because whatever you're telling yourself that you're trying to get your phone for is an excuse. You're just trying to escape the work you're doing. Maybe work is getting hard or something. I tell myself, what's the excuse I'm giving myself to touch my phone right now? It could be I'm trying to research on something. And a lot of times, whatever I'm trying to do is not necessarily so important to the particular moment. What I tend to do is I write it down somewhere else. So I just jot it down, check this person's Instagram later on, or make sure you have posted this video, or whatever I was trying to give as an excuse to distract myself, I write it down. And that gives me fulfillment that, okay, I'm not going to forget it. Because a lot of times we tell ourselves, if you don't do it now, if you don't do it now, you forget it. If you don't do it now, you forget it. So just write it down somewhere and forget it. Focus on the work you have to do. And every other time you find yourself trying to distract yourself, make sure you catch yourself in the act and get back to what you're doing. And it's by catching yourself in the act and being aware of every time you get distracted that you can master the patterns. You can understand what works for you personally. Because whatever I say now doesn't really matter. It's by doing this that you understand what works for you as a person. And you can now find out your own rules and your own laws that apply to you specifically and navigate breaking the circle of distraction. So as a quick recap, we talked about the 3 things we can do to regain our focus. And the first thing is acknowledging that we have lost focus, acknowledging that we are addicted. The second thing is trying to understand how our brain works and why we get so distracted. And the third thing is implementing the various steps we can implement to get back our focus. So today I challenge you to get focused with something today and try to implement any of the things I've said to help you stay focused in your life. And let me know in the comments if what I said actually works or if it worked for you. I'll appreciate that. Thank you very much for listening to me. It's a solo podcast. I don't have anybody here talking with me. We are not trying to say anything controversial or clickbaity, but you're here. It means you care about productivity and it means you care about your growth. It means you're someone like me. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I am hoping to see you on our next run with life.